non-duality is the absence of a personal looker. That there is somebody personally looking out of these eyes. So in your mind, although that's a projection, like in your mind, so in your thoughts, and there might be an energy that comes with it too, you might think and feel that somebody is looking at the world and somebody is experiencing the world and somebody's experiencing me. But actually, that person that you think you are is a construct that doesn't actually exist as a separate entity. It exists as a story that's appearing and disappearing, and it also doesn't exist as an experiencer. So that entity that you believe yourself to be isn't actually alive, it's dead. It's like dead matter. It's like a script written down on paper. So that you that you feel yourself to be is not actually alive and conscious. What? What? Yeah, so non-duality is this expansion from being that person to what you really are, which is not a thing. So you're not the person that feels it's alive. You're not a person that has a name or memories or imaginations or feels like it came from somewhere to here and is going somewhere. That is a film that's playing, just like the rest of this, just like the room, just like the dog, just like everything. It is an imagination which takes on an energetic contraction and makes it feel like consciousness belongs to it. So that person that has all these ideas and name and all these things, that person is alive and is conscious. Whereas actually there is consciousness and there is a person which is looked through. But that person is not actually an experiencer. So that one that feels like it's in here and looking out is not actually an experiencer, it's an experience. So that one that feels like it's looking at me and judging me and liking this or not liking this is not actually alive. That is a film running, that is slots appearing, energies appearing. When I say slots, I mean like the old-fashioned films, like those pictures, and then when it goes really quickly, it looks like the film is moving. And that's the same with the person. You're having energies and feelings and emotions and memories arising, and then it's all contained with this consciousness, and then it feels like that bundle is inside the body looking out. Whereas that's not true. There is consciousness which is actually looking from everywhere, but seemingly taking an angle, but it's actually looking from everywhere. Like when you try to find consciousness, like we feel like it's in our heads, but when you try to find it, it is nowhere. And the difference between the expansion and the contraction is that there is at some point some shift that happens, and then it feels like an expansion, like you're no longer contained in the body, you expand back out into yourself. And that expansion happens nowhere and everywhere. So before, the consciousness feels like it's contained in a person. And then when that releases, your essence feels like it's everywhere and nowhere. And it's unspeakable. It's absolutely silent, absolutely nothing, and all things. And then this character carries on playing, but it's not the experiencer anymore. It's not the center of the world anymore. It is an experience that's coming and going. And who you are is not a thing and all things. So in the day, your day-to-day living, you will notice this. Like when you feel really contracted in the body, or when you feel lots of suffering, you'll notice that there is lots of contraction in the body, and this is when seeking arises. So often what happens is pain arises, then there is a seeking to get rid of it, and then the energy contracts and you feel very dense and very unhappy, and you feel dense. And then when you feel more happy, if you begin to question it, you'll realize that you feel expanded. So when you're unhappy, you feel contracted, and when you're happy, you feel expanded. What the mind does is the mind then thinks that happiness is my freedom, and happiness is a feeling, and feelings happen because of what I experience. So the mind puts it into subject, object, and something that you can attain. So people think that happiness is what they want, and then they try to organize their life to do things which make them happy, but it never quite works because it's not that what you're actually looking for. What you're actually looking for is that expansion. And the reason that it comes when you feel happy is because when you're happy, you're not seeking for something else normally. So say if you're making love to your partner and you're really enjoying it, you're not seeking to be somewhere else. So the seeking stops, the identification gets less, and then there is an expansion. So seeking and the identification are kind of the same thing. When you're really unhappy, the seeking is very activated. This is why I presume a lot of teachings are taught to try to accept and allow the feelings, good or bad. Like, so not to run away from them. So an acceptance of the feelings, like a surrender to the feelings. So then everyone is seeking happiness in this life, but they most probably think it's things. But what they're seeking is the feeling of happiness, but they think it's in the house or in the money or in the animals or in the babies or in a new car, in a new environment, in living in the country and living in the city, partners, lovers, being right, whatever it is. So then the person seeks to achieve that. But actually it's the expansion that comes with when you feel happy, there is less contraction. And then at some point that contraction just pops and there is a shift that happens, and then it's kind of like that all the time. In my experience, it's like there has to be a bit, it's not like contraction, but there has to be a bit more Lisa for certain things, and then that can feel like more of a zooming in, I suppose. Like, so if I meditate, then there can be a complete letting go, and then it's like you have absolutely no sense of who you are and absolute expansion. Yeah. Then when you're doing more complex things, there needs to be more of an identification with the body. But I don't see that as suffering or seeking. It's just like, movement. And this stuff really doesn't make sense. So I'm trying my best to explain it. And it's kind of like trying to explain eating a watermelon. Like, I don't really know. I don't really have language to explain it. And I can't really explain it. The words come out though. Yeah. So most people in the society believe in the paradigm of the me and believe in the thinking of the me. And believe in that to be truth. So they believe that the world is real, or that science is real, or that the sea thing is real or not real, whatever your political orientation is. Or this is good or that is bad. And they believe that to be a truth. Whereas actually there is no truth. There is just what's happening, and then there's appearances of things that are more true and less true. But then there's not an actual truth. There's not an actual, this is the way it is. There's not actually something that's right. This is one of our massive identifications, is this idea of rightness and wrongness, goodness and badness. So the person has these beliefs and then becomes attached to it because it believes that brings happiness. So goodness brings happiness, rightness brings happiness, understanding brings happiness. And then there is this attachment to that, and then this energy of seeking for that, and that energy creates the person. I know it seems so crazy that that's what could create the person, but it creates this feeling of someone in time, this person that's always seeking for something that's not here. Like, it's not about narration as such. Like, narrating is part of what the brain does, but it's the seeking creates like an incessant narrating and a really like strong attachment to what that person believes. And then this is where wars are created, like I am right and you are wrong. It's so interesting. Yeah, I noticed something interesting in me lately. So I'll just talk about myself for a while. Me. Isn't there a cartoon like that where the seagulls are like, me? I think they're after food or something. Maybe it's in Nemo, Finding Nemo. Me. They're really stupid. Yeah. So after these shifts happen, after these awakenings, whatever you want to call them, then it's like a deepening into the personality structure. And old seeking patterns are let go of, and old ideas, and the person, I would say, expands more to this realization. And something that I begin to really deeply feel in my body is how there's never a right or wrong. And that's very obvious, but it become like, when this is expanding through your body, it becomes deeper into like the neurology of your body. And it becomes so deep, it's like a knowing in your body. Like we can say there's relative right or wrong, like it's wrong to run over someone's cat or hurt animals. So in life there's like these relatives, but I mean, like really there is no right or wrong, ever. Like to really feel that and know that, like a yeah, there's some part of my character that I can see, you know, from being into this subject and relating with other people, you become very wise. I'm sure all of you realize that, and you see dynamics with people, and you see like where war comes from and arguments, and there comes some sort of like feeling like not that you know better than people, it's just that, you know, you can see them playing out games or being very attached to the person. And so sometimes in me there is like a little feeling hidden that's so tiny or so hidden, feeling like a rightness in interactions. And it's really not true. No matter how wise you are, it always takes two to tango. Two to tango. So if somebody is screaming and shouting at you, there's always two energies at play. That doesn't, I'm not saying in any way that you need to stay in an abusive relationship or that it's your fault if you're being abused. That's a whole different subject that's so complex. Like, so just ignore like all abusive relationships in this context. But whenever you're relating with someone, no matter what, it always takes two energies to interact, and these two energies are one energy. So if the other person is acting really unconsciously and and lots of identification, it's still only able to happen because of your body, of that energy. It's like, it's hard to explain. It's circular. Doesn't mean that it's your fault. Forget that. That's way up there on the levels of depth. Yeah. It's really beautiful. It's also really humbling. And I can see in the personality structure, there can be, in relationships, there can sometimes be a looking for what's right or what's wrong, the right way to behave, the mature way to behave, the integrated way to behave. And yeah, that's great because that helps you evolve. But it's just that there really isn't a right or wrong. A right person and a wrong person. Really. At all. So if you think about all the arguments you've had in the last year, where you felt like you were right, is absolutely not true. It might be relatively true. Like if somebody stole from you, that you could say is not right, but it's really not true. There is one energy dancing here. One energy. And that's not intellectual. It's really like it goes into your neurology. It becomes like the human being expands more to that through time, till it becomes so deep into the person that maybe at some point all of those responses begin to disappear. Yeah. So if you feel victimized by somebody, because most people don't feel like the perpetrator, even if they are the perpetrator. So most people feel victimized. So if you feel victimized by someone, like it really isn't true. It's only in regards to this functioning society. And that really is love, like unconditioned love. I am not saying we don't put people in prison. I'm not saying that you stay in abusive relationships. I'm not saying it's okay to rape or do harmful things at all. This is so much deeper than that. That's really superficial. That's like taking a tiny little pickaxe and like picking at a massive like ice cap. This is about deeply feeling it in the body, deeply knowing that. So it becomes more the response of the body in the moment. From the absolute perspective, it's all irrelevant. There is just watching. There's not good, bad, right, wrong, up, down, left, right. There is just watching that's perfectly still and all things and has no perspective and no judgment. But then you have the body that does have judgments and does, respond if something scary comes, or if someone's being aggressive, there is a response back, dependent on the way it's conditioned. And that expands and evolves to this. It's love, absolute unconditioned love. But yet, there is no body that is more enlightened than other bodies. This is like a measuring stick that's full of stupidity. The idea that you are higher than someone or more evolved than somebody is absolutely untrue. There can be a relative recognition that somebody's not into this subject or not into non-duality, and therefore not speaking along those lines with them. But this idea of being more or less evolved is cuckoo. Yeah, so beautiful. Okay, let me open Skype. So if you've got questions, then you can ask me on Skype. My address is Lisa Cairns 12. If you want to call in, please call me. Make sure you've got a good headset and microphone. Otherwise, you can just write the question in Skype.